So ladies and gentlemen, coming up next is James Melton. As an airline pilot and flight instructor, James Melton began his career in the cockpit of an airplane. He has a rich and varied background as a journalist, college instructor, and professional speaker for conventions worldwide. Public television produced a series on his work. Jim transforms complex issues into simple, common-sense terms for many of the top Fortune 500 companies, and he holds a PhD in management. Please welcome Jim.
Hey, thank you, Sept. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it. Notice there's absolutely nothing in there on Mars. Now, it doesn't mean I don't love Mars. It doesn't mean I don't have a passion for Mars. The first book I bought on Mars was in 1951, and I could read at the time. And I'll tell you what, there once was a girl named Miss Bright. She could travel much faster than light. She departed one morning and without any warning returned on the previous night. Exactly. I saw some lip syncing there, which was good. I love that little limerick. And tell you what, there's a lot that's going on with Mars. But the thing about it is, Kelly, we want to get the message out. If I heard it once, I heard it 10, 20, 30 times during this conference. How do we get the message out? So I wrote a book. It's on, I call it Red Planet Leadership. The reason I call it Red Planet Leadership is because I wanted to learn more about Mars. The book came out last Friday, perfect timing for the Mars Society Conference. And I addressed the corporate world. That's what I do. And I thought, Adam, like you, I like to tell stories. And I like to talk to people who are interested in things that are just a little bit different. I was doing a program last week for the Disney World Corporation, and it was on innovation. They called it Energize with Innovation. So I talked a little bit about Mars, and I captured their attention. I asked, are they going to build a Mars Disney Dome? What are the plans for that? They all looked up and said, what are you talking about? And usually people will ask you, are you talking about the Mars bar? Is that what you're talking about? So I'm not talking about Mars today because right in front of me sits so much more knowledge than stands before you about Mars. So you can talk to me about Mars, but you'll probably have more answers than I do. What I'm here for is to show ways that I've learned over the years to present ideas to people, and how you can do that effectively with your Mars Parlaver. Now, here's the problem. Very often, it's kind of like, I know you believe you understand what you think I said, but I'm not sure you realize that what you heard is not at all what I meant. I mean, we say things about Mars, and people don't understand what we're talking about. Oh, they'll understand what I'm talking about, all right, because mine is very low level. But yours, on the other hand, if you want to get your message out, there are ways to do it effectively. Now, I really enjoyed a couple of speakers. One was Adam here, just a little bit ago, talks about telling stories.
I broke 4 of your rules.
But you broke some rules. You did, I know. Adam, I still love you. It's wearing thin, however. It's wearing thin. Okay. But Loretta, how many saw Loretta Whiteside's, was that yesterday, Dana? By the way, let me introduce you to the woman who makes my life the spectacular adventure that it is, my wife, Dana, right over there. Give her a hand. All right. Loretta was stellar. She was stellar. Richard, her husband, was great, too. You probably saw Richard and did a great job. He's, what is it, the CEO of Virgin? Is that what he is? Anyway, she was wonderful. And she talked a lot about culture. What kind of culture are we going to bring to Mars? And you talked about the culture bias. And where's Mary? Is Mary still in there? She wrote the book. She just left. She probably knew I was speaking. So she talked about culture. And everybody does. So it reminds me of when do we learn our principles? When do we start establishing this culture? When do we start moving into the area of establishing values and beliefs and ethics. And you talk to any psychologist or psychiatrist, they'll tell you it's by the age of 6 or 8 years. We establish how we're going to think. And many of us sitting here today have, in fact, oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. You go on. This is just for the video.
All right, fine. Many of the people here today are functioning on these ideas that they formed at the age of 6 or 8 or sometime before that. And how do we teach these? My friend Ron is a perfect example. He lived in Prescott, Arizona, and he was going to go to the bank, and Jason was going to go with him. He wanted to go, and so Ron said, come on with me. So they got in the car and they drove to the bank. And Ron said, wait right here, I'll be right back, Jason. So he went inside. Jason watched him go through the glass doors, walked up to the teller, wrote out a check, gave it to the teller. The teller gave him the money, and he counted it. Ron started walking back to the door. Halfway between the teller and the door, Jason saw Ron stop. He looked at the money. He counted it with a perplexed look on his face. He put it in his pocket. He walked back outside. He got in the car. And Jason looked up at me and he said, what's wrong, Dad? He said, son, we have a problem. The teller has given me $100 more than she should have. We have an ethical dilemma, and I'd like your help. Should we or should we not? Tell your mother. All right, so what are we doing? What are we saying? How are we approaching people? I mean, I have found, and I'm very sorry to say this, and maybe you've found the same thing, one of the quickest ways to clear the room at a party is to start talking about Mars. Why? Because no one knows about it. It's not on the topic of conversation of anyone. But mark my words, what we do in the next 3 to 5 years will dramatically affect our future more than any other time in history. And we need to do it right. So, I've laid down some ideas on what to do and what not to do, and you probably have your handouts. You don't have to read them. I'm going to go through them very quickly. All right. The first thing I put on the handout was timing. Impeccable. Start on time and end on time if you're giving a talk. Now, if you don't have a stump speech for Mars, develop one. It can be 60 seconds, that's all. And I'm going to ask for action at the end of this program regarding that. Now, one of the things I did in this book for corporate America is my stump speech is chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 13. That is my Mars talk. And when I go to Rotary, when I go to Kiwanis, when I go to garden clubs, when I talk at parties, even when I speak with the corporate America, I use parts of those elements in my talk when I'm addressing, because they're areas that are very basic. I'm not capable of talking over people's heads regarding Mars. You are, but I'm not. So I talk more, I would say, maybe on their level. Timing is important. Don't make it long, because watch television sometime. Not very often, but watch it sometime. What's the length of the longest segment you will find on video when you're watching a sitcom or something? What's the length, roughly? This is called audience response. What's that, Lulu? 11 minutes?
45 minutes.
No, it's about 2 minutes. If they hold a shot on video for about 2 minutes, forgive me for not explaining it. Anyway, so, okay, that's number one. And I ask you to put together a talk with 3 phases. Present the problem, provide a solution, ask for action. It's that simple. And you can weave a 15-minute talk, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. You can weave a 30-minute talk, 10, 20, 30. You can weave a 1 hour, present the problem, provide a solution, ask for action. All right, what's the second point? The second point is tell stories. I think it's important to tell stories. I mean, by the way, you see there's nothing up here, because what I want is I want your attention. and I'm going to get it. Yeah, because you are the visual. You are the one. You are the one they want to listen to, and it's important. Now, I did love your visuals, Adam. I really did. They were fun, and it was exciting. But not a lot of people do that. Some people have little 8-point type, and you can't read it. Yours were glaring with bells and whistles, and that was excellent. So, what's the second point? Incorporate audience, not the second, pardon me, I'm coming down, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Okay. See, now you got my attention.
I thought I turned it off.
That's okay, I'll forgive you. You know, actually, I tell you what, because you're so embarrassed, that deserves a book. It's a great book. I read it a couple times myself. All right. So number 9, I'm starting David Letterman, top 10. Number 9 is audience participation. Oh, I guess I got ahead of myself. That's okay. So audience participation. Let me borrow your book just a second. What you want to do is you want to read something from something that you've got, maybe a story, maybe a short verbiage or whatever. I had an interview with Alan Bean. I thought he did a great job in here. Got some great interviews from various people that Dan and I booked Alan and Gene Kranz and a few of the astronauts, Jim Lovell, and our agency for speakers and entertainers for many years. And Alan said this. He said, when I entered the Navy, I felt I was deficient in leadership skills, and I had, if any, little charisma, and I needed to improve both. I read a number of books on leadership. I studied the principles. I learned what to do, and consequently, I improved upon my leadership skills. Just little things like that you can read, and people will include some kind of an visual, some kind of a what we call AP, audience response. Something you can do in a talk is you can say, just to get their attention, because some people come into the audience and they'll sit there, you know, with their eyes folded. That's okay. And what I say is, how many people, and answer me, how many people would like to have a little more fun in life? Just how many of you would? Okay. How many would like to have a little more money in their lives? You know? Oh, great, that's good. How many would like a little more love in their lives? Anybody at all? You guys got 2 hands up back there. We say we want more love, we want more enthusiasm, we want more of what the, quote, good life has to offer. And if for some reason or other, a lot of people are not willing to make the changes necessary to bring about the changes. Now, talking about why I did that, why did I do that? Because it sometimes breaks the lock. And people will respond, and they will be more participatory, and that's important. All right, coming down the list, I said tell stories, and I think that's important. And you made a point of that very much, Adam. I like that. I like that exactly. Stories are critical. Personal stories. One of the stories that I myself remember, I usually ask the question, how many people here know someone who failed kindergarten? Anybody?
Yeah.
It's hard to do. Did you know somebody did do that? Yeah, okay.
Well, they were too hyper.
They were hyper, okay. I went to 36th Street Elementary School in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My kindergarten teacher was Mrs. Werfel. And we're all sitting around, she's a tall gal, bun in the back of her hair. She gave us some paper, and we were sitting around this table, it's a wooden table, making these paper boxes with this huge jar of white paste that you love to eat. You know, that's the peppermint taste kind of, you know. You remember that. And I was putting more on my paper box in my tongue than I should have. And Mrs. Werfel came to our table, and she picked up one of the kids' boxes at the table. And she held it high over her head, and she said, "Children, children, this is not the way to make a paper box." And she threw it on the table. The kid was devastated. I mean, he was embarrassed. You could see his face was welling up, tears forming in his eyes. And as she was holding my box high in the air, yeah, it was my box, all right. I didn't want to spend time in school anymore. I got mumps, whooping cough, measles, bronchitis, pneumonia, strep throat, anything, so I didn't have to go back to school and be embarrassed. And I failed kindergarten. I took special reading classes all during elementary school because I was taught I was a slow reader. I took special reading classes all during high school because I was taught, and I bought into it, my problem, I was taught I was a slow reader. Mrs. Ingram in my 12th grade English class looked at me, and there were 5 people in the room. Ingram, myself, Polly Jens, whom I had a crush on. Never asked her out, Bob. Never asked her out. Jack Husky and Wally Henderson. And she said to me, Jim, don't ever attempt college. You will never make it. Yeah. I learned several things from that. Number one, they didn't have a name for dyslexia at the time. But number one, I realized never allow anyone's opinion of you to become more important than your own opinion of yourself. Amen. And number two, whenever you feel self-assured, you don't pull out garbage from other people. Whenever you know who you are, you don't create static in the world around you. And whenever you're really self-assured, it doesn't matter what they say because it rolls off. If they talk to you about Mars and they don't have any foggy idea what it's about, it's our job to educate them. It's our job to educate the children. That's what I'm talking about. All right, that's number 8, wasn't it? Tell stories. Number 7, speak up. Speak twice as loud as you think you need to talk. Because we're talking to a room of people. You know, when you're talking back and forth like this, it's a different story. But when you're talking to an audience of 1,000 people or 30 people at Rotary, wherever it might be, you know, be bold. Speak up. That's okay. I guarantee you, if you're nervous, it doesn't show. Normally, 99% it doesn't show. Dan and I went to a program, Dan, when was that? That was American Booksellers program back, a while back, yeah. Art Buchwald was moderating. It was Irma Bombeck, Shirley MacLaine, and Dick Cavett. It was marvelous. It was a breakfast. There were 1,500 people in the audience, 1,500. And at the end of the program, this is the breakfast, they all rose from their chairs as one, and they walked out. Dana and I were the only 2 people in the 1,500 that walked up on the stage, introduced ourselves to Dick Cavett and Shirley MacLaine and the group. And Dick gave me some great advice because I was in the process at the time of pulling the TV show together. He said, Jim, remember this. It always looks better than it felt when you did it. And I remember that. Okay. Now, last night, in the fortune cookie, I kept it, Dana. I kept it. It says, silence the critic within. The hardest critic you will ever have is yourself. So shut it up. All right. Where are we going down here now? Number 8.
Be enthusiastic.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, number 6. Thank you. That's why I brought you along. Be enthusiastic. You know, it's sometimes hard to do, but act enthusiastic and you'll be enthusiastic. That's what Dale Carnegie said. Maxwell Maltz talked about it. He said, think of the end result that you want in terms of a present possibility. Somebody said, what you see with your eyes closed, you will eventually see with your eyes open. Solomon said, where there is no vision, the people will perish. I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, even the master a couple of 1,000 years ago said, pray believing you have received. What you put in your mind, you are going to experience. So let's go to Mars. Why not? Put it in your mind. Put a date on it. I give goal achievement programs. By the way, I don't give goal setting programs, Zach. I give goal achievement programs. A lot of people set goals, but they don't achieve them. So we need to have a focus, dedication, and discipline, and that's the key. All right, moving on. Where am I?
5.
Number 5. Here's a little trick when you're given a program. Start out the program any way you want to. Usually break the lock, you know, ask them a question, make a statement, give them a poem or something like that. That's good. But say, I'm going to cover 5 points. and watch the audience. They'll fumble around for a pen, a pencil, piece of paper, and you have their captive attention. They're ready to write the 5 points. So itemize those things. Make sure that they know that you don't have 51 points, you've got 5 points. All right. Dana helps me with this. She always says, Jim, remember to breathe. So just sit and relax for a second. Close your eyes if you want to. I'd like you to do that. Breathe deeply and relax. Just soak in the gentleness of breath. Feed your brain. It's very important. A few deep breaths before you speak, it cuts the nervousness and that sort of thing, and it helps. All right. Number 3, don't read your talk. Probably not a good idea, unless you're going to stay on track. Someone said if I had more time, I'd write you a shorter letter. So I made some notes here. Okay. Number 2, podium presence. I break all the rules there. Usually when it's a big crowd, I run out. I like to be with the people. If I'm not with the people, see, we are giving the talk. We are the ones who are doing it. It's very important that we be with the people. And the last one, ask for action. And here's where I'm going to ask for action. There's a way to ask for action where you get action. You know, one of the greatest secrets in leadership. Remember, when was that? You know the date. Bob, what is it? Kennedy gave the talk. May 25th, 1961. Was that to Congress?
Yes.
Yeah. He said in his own inimitable style, "Yeah, I believe this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth." And on July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong said with a lot more composure than I would have had, "Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed." Ladies and gentlemen, those were not words. That was a vision. And when you capture a vision for your personal life, your company, your community, your nation, people will rally behind you to the ends of the earth and beyond to help you reach your dream. It's been proven, Adam, but guaranteed, if you don't have a dream, people will continually meander on through your path, preventing you from reaching any end whatsoever. What is your dream? I know what your dream is, Dr. Robert Zubrin, and you are focused. I'm going to have to say this, and I would never say this. Maybe I would. Actually, I'm going to say it now. That man sitting right there is the reason I wrote this book. He got me so motivated when I read The Case for Mars. I've been talking about The Case for Mars for over a year now with my audiences, and I said, this stuff's got to get out. And I talk to the corporate world, so how can I get it out to the corporate world? That's a good book for the corporate world, but it's more for, it's pretty brainy. I got brains, but I don't know all that stuff. But I know how to connect with the corporate world. So that's what I felt. And I put this together. I felt it was good, and I want to ask a favor of you, and I ask it in the last part of the book. This week, I'll end with this. This week, I'll ask you to take 60 seconds, and enter into a conversation within your sphere of influence, the idea of creating and supporting a human civilization on Mars. Watch the results. Watch the response. How many would be willing to take 60 seconds this week and enter into a conversation that statement? Congratulations. I appreciate that. There are only 3 kinds of people, and you know what they are. Those who make things happen, those who watch things happen, And there will always be those who wonder, what happened? They have no idea what's going on. Hey, thank you, and thank you, Dr. Zubrin, and thank you, Mars Society. God bless you. Questions? Oh, okay. Zach wants me to ask a couple of questions. Adam.
Don't ask me.
No, Adam. No, go ahead. What?
It was Case for Mars that got as being outside of this world that got me interested too, because I
As it
said
did
this
thousands of
is
others.
doable. So how do I talk to short attention span people about it?
Exactly.
Do you, when you talk to, and I know obviously talking to business people, zero attention span. What entry points do you use? Do you cater to them?
Well, number one, you need to be a good listener. This is so, and this was brought up, I think, by Richard Whiteside yesterday. We really need to listen to what other people are, because basically people are waiting to talk. So yes, I do listen to them, and I try to couch what I'm saying in terms of what they're interested in. That's a short answer. Yes.
Yeah, I work up at the base. I'm at Vandenberg Air Force Base, and I'm basically a chauffeur. I drive foreign nationals around when they're doing the launches, and it's just been the most amazing experience of my life. I'm 70, and it's changed my life. And I find what you said right at the beginning. When I start talking to people, they fall asleep.
Yes.
What do I do? How do I take that and do something?
Well, number one,
Yes. What?
you run back there and you give them a big hug.
I was hoping you'd do that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's one of them. You ask questions. My friend Cabot Roberts said, ask questions. Ask questions. Yes, please.
I teach graphic design, and one of the things I always tell my students is don't belittle your audience. So don't write Apple and show them an apple and repeat it over and over again. What suggestions do you have for scientists and other people in this field right now? How can, when they're talking about high-level concepts, very specific niche ideas, what suggestions do you have so they don't belittle and alienate their audience, especially when it's so complex of topics?
Well, if I may take liberty here, and it won't be long, Jack. Number one, you can't belittle anyone, in my opinion. People belittle themselves. So when I'm talking with people, I like to think of the audience as all of us being one. What good would it be for me to be here today if no one were here? Now, scientists, in my mind, there's not a lecture that I can go to, no matter what level it is, high or low in my understanding, that I can't learn something. So I think it's up to the participant to be attentive. If stories, as you so eloquently did today, Adam, come on, I have to give you credit on that. Stories, if scientists would get out of the statistics and get into stories that people can relate to, like Jason and Ron, my goodness, what a story. I mean, really, how do you teach ethics? How do you teach respect? I mean, the base of our society is built on respect, ethics, and dignity. The dignity to comport oneself with a certain a decorum, a certain demeanor. How do we teach those ideas, and what will we take to Mars? So, connecting with the people that way by stories, I think is helpful. Anyone else? Last question, and then James Burke is going to be on.
Well, not really a question. I mean, next Sunday I will have opportunities to tell at least 10 or 12 people on the patio of the Unitarian Universalist Church, which is a little bit like living in the Enterprise.
Yes, yes,
And,
yes.
I need to have like 15 seconds. I went to the Mars Society conference, and so like when I go home, I need to write a whole bunch of little one-liners.
Sure. Well, maybe we should talk after. Do you have a few minutes after?
Yes, I do.
I'd be happy to support you with that. All right. Again, you've been a delight. This is my first Mars Society conference, but not my last. It's been a marvelous experience here, and I want to thank Dr. Zubrin and all of the people for pulling it together. Thank you.